Namaskar, welcome to this special series where we are trying to be in tune to the wisdom of Swami Vivekananda. Today we have a very special theme that is again we'll be reading in sequential manner his lecture on hints on practical spirituality. And as always in this series, joining me today, Gita ji, स्वागत है आपका. We did one on work and its secret. And what do you recollect? One word that stayed with you from that discourse of Swami Vivekananda.
Self-alignment, working on myself, keeping myself in
And
good spirit
yes,
and live.
absolutely. And detachment was also there.
Absolutely. Big one, big one.
Hmm,
In fact, that came to me early morning also today. I was going to do something and then I'm like, okay, you need to control, stop, breathe. You don't need to react. That's the one I got actually.
right.
Not
So
to react,
respond, don't react. That's the bottom line.
respond, not react.
So going to Swami Vivekananda today, we will be reading Hints on Practical Spirituality. If you have read Swami Vivekananda, still you may enjoy listening to this again. And if you have not read, it'll be a great way of understanding yourself. So let's begin. Gita, you want to take the first part?
Hints of practical spirituality. That's the topic. This morning, I shall try to present to you some ideas about breathing and other exercises. We have been discussing theories so long that now it'll be well to have a little of the practical. A great many books have been written in India upon the subject. Just as your people are practical in many things, so it seems our people are practical in this line. Five persons in this country will join their heads together and say, we will have a joint stock company. And in 5 hours, it's done. In India, they could not do it in 50 years. They are so unpractical in matters like this. But mark you, if a man starts a system of philosophy, however wild its theory may be, it will have followers. For instance, a sect is started to teach that if a man stands on one leg for 12 years, days and night, he will get salvation. There will be hundreds ready to stand on one leg. All the suffering will be quietly borne. There are people who keep their arms upraised for years to gain religious merits. I have seen hundreds of them, and mind you, they are not always ignorant fools, but are men who will astonish you with the depth and breadth of their intellect. So you see, the word practical is also relative.
The word practical is also relative, and he was so practical. And this was delivered again. We are um, having this imported address of Swami Vivekananda. So this was LA, and then he delivered this at the Home of Truth in California. So we continue with this, but any point that you want to make from this paragraph?
I just want to make a quick reference that it is little somewhere relevant to say that they have started paying attention to the other things also and very
Yeah.
fast. I'm very happy to say that India has progressed leaps and bounds in so many other things also now, which, yes, we are very proud.
Yeah, so I think Swami Vivekananda could foresee that that's likely to happen. Maybe this was his way of bringing focus of Indians towards this side of learning from the West in terms of, as he said, 5% in this country will join their heads together and say we will have a joint stock company. तो इंडिया में भी
That's not
इकोनॉमी
wrong, actually.
होने
I
लगा है.
mean, that is correct too. But थोड़ा सा इंडिया का तो बदलाव आया है, थोड़ा सा.
एब्सोल्युटली.
I'm very
उस
happy.
हिसाब से अगर देखा जाए तो थोड़ा सा बदलाव यहाँ भी आ ही गया है.
यहाँ पर भी
कई
आ
लोग
गए थोड़ा
स्पिरिचुअलिटी की
स्पिरिचुअलिटी
तरफ.
में. People have started understanding that there is something where
और
they
क्या,
have to
जितने
work.
ज्यादा योगा सेंटर्स या मैनहट्टन में है, उसको पहले आप सोच भी नहीं सकते थे. तो दैट इज
Seriously.
ट्रू. Mm.
That's true.
So we continue with the second paragraph from Hints on Practical Spirituality. We are always making this mistake in judging others. We are always inclined to think that our little mental universe is all that is. Our ethics, our morality, our sense of duty, our sense of utility are the only things that are worth having. The other day, when I was going to Europe, I was passing through Marseilles, where a bullfight was being held. All the Englishmen in the steamer were mad with excitement, abusing, criticizing the whole thing as cruel. When I reached England, I heard of a party of prize fighters who had been to Paris and were kicked out unceremoniously by the French, who thought prize fighting very brutal. When I hear these things in various countries, I begin to understand the marvelous saying of Christ: Judge not, that you be not judged. The more we learn, the more he find out how ignorant we are, how multiform and multi-sided is this mind of man. When I was a baby, I used to criticize the ascetic practices of my countrymen. Great preachers in our land have criticized them. The greatest man that was ever born, Buddha himself, criticized them. But all the same, as I'm growing older, I feel that I have no right to judge. Sometimes I
Mm.
wish that, in spite of all their incongruities, I had one fragment of their power to do and suffer. Often I think that my judgment and my criticism do not proceed from any dislike of torture, but from sheer cowardice, because I cannot do it, I dare not do it.
Mm. Very interesting.
So again, in our words, he's comparing how what we consider is wrong in the other, we are also having that somewhere in a different form. So
It's so common. It's so common. I feel I was, after yesterday only, I was realizing how many times in, say, 10 minutes, we pass a judgment. The thought just comes, nahi, nahi, pata nahi kya bol rahe. That thought. And then I'm like, okay, understand, you are passing a judgment. It is hard way to fix yourself, but one day at a time, I feel it's so right though. He is so bang on that.
so please continue. Next paragraph.
So I will start the next one.
Then
Then
you see.
you see that strength, power, and courage are things which are very peculiar. We generally say a courageous man, a brave man, a daring man. But we must bear in mind that the courage or bravery or any other trait does not always characterize the man. The same man who would rush to the mouth of a cannon shrinks from a knife of a surgeon, and another man who never dares to face a gun will calmly bear a severe surgical operation if need be. Now, in judging others, you must always define your terms of courage or greatness. The man whom I'm criticizing as not good may be wonderfully so in some points in which I'm not.
Very well said.
Very
Very,
well.
very well said. Actually, he has brought our attention to consider how we define courage. And then, if I take a slightly lighter side, or so if you are courageous, then only you get married, is one way of putting it. You learn a
That's,
lot. You
that's a good
learn.
one.
So, but
On both ends.
on both sides, yeah,
I would speak about
irrespective
the
of the
ladies the
gender.
same.
Yeah, irrespective of the gender, correct. So, and how do you define greatness? If someone is good in running, is he the one to be given the title of being a great, or the one who sit still, unmoved?
Depends
Like,
who and
and I
when.
think, yeah, again,
If you're
so
a
how do
runner,
you,
then yes, the running
yeah,
is
again,
your
so
forte.
totally opposing sides, and yet both may have an element of greatness. Or if you
Best
are
is
running
if
from,
physically we are on, we are mm, physically we are running and mentally we are still. That is where, at the end of the day, we would like to bring. I I would like to bring myself long way to go. I would say, but try करने में क्या जाता है? करना चाहिए।
तो ट्राई करने की बात को लेते हैं, आगे चलते हैं। आपका
बिल्कुल।
पैराग्राफ के अगले वाले से मैं प्रारंभ कर देता हूँ। टेक
जी।
अनदर एग्जांपल, यू ऑफन नोट व्हेन पीपल आर डिस्कसिंग एज टू व्हाट मैन एंड वुमेन कैन डू, ऑलवेज द सेम मिस्टेक इज मेड. They think they show man at his best because he can fight, for instance, and undergo tremendous physical exertion. And this is pitted against the physical weakness and the non-combating quality of women. This is unjust.
Yep.
Woman is as courageous as man. Each is equally good in his or her way. What man can bring up a child with such patience, endurance, and love as the woman can, the one has developed the power of doing, the other the power of suffering. If women cannot act, neither can men suffer. The whole universe is one of perfect balance. I do not know, but someday we may wake up and find that the mere worm has something which balances our manhood. The most wicked person may have some good qualities that I entirely lack. I see that every day of my life. Look at the savage. I wish I had such a splendid physique. He eats, he drinks, or to his heart's content without knowing perhaps what sickness is, while I'm suffering every minute. How many times would I have been glad to have changed my brain for his body? The whole universe is only a wave and a hollow. There can be no wave without a hollow.
Beautiful.
Balance everywhere. You have one thing great, your neighbor has another thing great. When you are judging men and women, judge them by the standard of their respective greatness.
Wow.
One cannot be in other shoes. The one has no right to say that the other is wicked. It is the same old superstition that says, if this is done, the world will go to ruin. But in spite of this, the world has not yet come to ruin. It was said in this country that if the Negroes were freed, the country would go to ruin. But did it? It was also said that if the masses were educated, the world would come to ruin. But it was only made better. Several years ago, a book came out depicting the worst things that could happen to England. The writer showed that as worksmen, wages were rising, English commerce was declining, a cry was raised that the workmen in England were exorbitant in their demands, and that the Germans worked far for less wages. A commission was sent over to Germany to investigate this, and it reported that German laborers received higher wages. Why was it so? Because of the education of the masses. Then, how about the world going to ruin if the masses are educated? In India, especially, we meet with old fogies all over the land. They want to keep everything secret from the masses. These people come to the very satisfying conclusion that they are the creme de la creme of this universe. They believed they cannot be hurt by these dangerous experiments. It is only masses that can be hurt by them.
Hmm.
So now he again, um, we keep on repeating, he's so brilliant, and there is this freshness in his expression. And anything that you picked up from this paragraph, Gita?
No, non-judgment is the main thing, and never underestimate. Like in tennis, I remember when I was playing, one thing was taught to us very clearly: never ever underestimate the opponent. They have their strength. So know your strengths, but you have to know the other person's strengths also, and you have to acknowledge it. They may be so much better in many things that you are not. Like he just said it here. So that's what my take is from that. And
And I think he also initially, in first few lines, compared how stereotype of gender play a role in
yes, that's correct.
declaring that maybe man is more courageous than women, and of course things are changing on that front also. Gita ji. Mm,
Very true, very true. I would like to add here that also I feel anybody who is loud doesn't necessarily mean he is stronger. Or if somebody doesn't say much, the, the intensity in somebody who's quiet is many times much more. The way I have seen. So
absolutely. So we'll continue, Gita ji. Yeah.
absolutely, I would. Go back to that.
Now coming back to practical.
Now, coming back to the practical. The subject of the practical application of psychology has been taken up in India from very early times. About 1400 years before Christ, there flourished in India a great philosopher, Patanjali by name. He collected all facts, evidences, and researches in psychology and took advantage of all the experiences accumulated in the past. Remember, this world is very old. It was not created only 2 or 300 years ago. It is taught here in the West that society began 1800 years ago with the New Testament. Before that, there was no society. That may be true with regards to the West, but it is not true as regards the whole world. Often, while I was lecturing in London, a very intellectual and intelligent friend of mine would argue with me. And one day, after using all his weapons against me, he suddenly exclaimed, "But why did your rishis come to England to teach us? Why did not your rishis come to England to teach us?" I replied, "Because there was no England to come to." Would they preach to the forests?
So
Yeah.
I want to go back to the time period when this lecture was delivered. It is near 1900, so it is over 125 almost years, something like
Wow.
that. And his vision and his clarity and his self-esteem and his pride in Indian cultural heritage and the amount of knowledge and his ability to reproduce, everything is simply superb.
Oh, marvelous, marvelous.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it is
So,
so rightly said. I will just add one thing here, which again, between the East and West thing. So I have a friend here who, a non-Indian, and we were having some argument of some kind, and she suddenly goes, she's like, "Honey, I practice yoga. I know." I said, "You may be practicing yoga. I live yoga. That's the difference between you and me." So I completely relate to what he's saying there. It's a very different mindset. By that, I definitely don't mean that anybody in the West is not in that frame of mind. Many may be, but what he said is very relevant for that time
yeah,
too.
in the context in which Swami Vivekananda was making this point and the difference between East and West, and that was at the time when India was not an independent country, it speaks even more. What should I say about the glory of Swami Vivekananda? That he was standing on that spot of clear vision where he could see beyond what apparently was being shown. But what has happened after we gained independence in India, we have not continued with the similar kind of pride as was
Also, the
expressed.
forthrightness with which he said it. He was here, he was in the West and talking about India, and even to a Britisher when he was talking to him,
Yeah.
it was in England.
Yeah.
So that is amazing. I salute to that. Mm.
So I'll continue. 50 years ago, said Ingersoll to me, "You would have been hanged in this country if you had come to preach. You would have been burnt alive or you would have been stoned out of the villages." So there is nothing unreasonable in the supposition that civilization existed 1400 years before Christ. It is not yet settled whether civilization has always come from the lower to the higher. The same arguments and proofs that have been brought forward to prove this proposition can also be used to demonstrate that the savage is only a degraded civilized man. Very good expression, Gita ji.
Very nice.
It can also be used to demonstrate that the savage is only a degraded civilized man. The people of China, for instance, can never believe that civilization sprang from a savage state because the country is within their experience.
Yes.
But when you talk of the civilization of America, what you mean is the perpetuity and the growth of your own race.
Yes.
It is very easy to believe that the Hindus, who have been declining for 700 years, were highly civilized in the past. We cannot
True.
prove that it is not so. There is not one single instance of any civilization being spontaneous. There was not a race in the world which became civilized unless another civilized race came and mingled with that race.
Mm,
The origin of civilization must have belonged, so to say, to one or two races who were abroad, who went abroad, spread their ideas, and intermingled with other races, and thus civilization spread.
very well said. Very well said.
So, the vastness uh, the understanding of Swami Vivekananda also, uh, of course, everywhere, but in this paragraph also, where he's taking a very macro look on the way world has evolved, or and different countries, different civilizations. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And coming out of India, giving it over here, it is nice. That, I mean, I don't know how he thought about that to get out of there and take the Hindu philosophy to the West
I
and
think
come out so intensely about it. And so rightfully.
he had many people who were convinced that he would be the right representative, and they encouraged and
Excellent.
supported him also to come out of India. And of course, the blessings of his Guru Ramakrishna Paramahansa ji, and
Absolutely.
much more. So, please continue. We are reading this
For practical
talk,
purposes.
practical hints on practical spirituality. Okay.
For practical purposes, let's talk in the language of modern science. But I must ask you to bear in mind that as there is religious superstition, so also there is a superstition in the matter of science. There are priests who take up religious work as their specialty. So also there are priests of physical law, scientists. As soon as a great scientist name like Darwin or Huxley is cited, we follow blindly. It is a fashion of the day. 90% of what we call scientific knowledge is mere theories, and many of them are no better than the old superstitions of ghosts with so many heads and hands. But with this difference that the latter differentiated man a little from stocks and stones. True science asks us to be cautious. Just as we should be careful with the priest, so we should be with the scientists. Begin with disbelief, analyze, test, prove everything, and then take it. Some of the most current beliefs of modern science have not been proved. Even in such a science, even in such a science as mathematics, a vast majority of its theories are only working hypotheses. With the advent of greater knowledge, they will be thrown away. Hmm.
Very, very, very well said. And this is what we are experiencing. We have started replacing science with
Religion.
religion, and many theories are not proved, or they keep on changing. But when they are presented, we take it as the last gospel of truth. And so,
Yeah.
hats actually I don't have, but hats off to Swami Vivekananda to have said what we are experiencing even in this age.
Even now.
And
And I love
giving
that. Then begin with disbelief, analyze, test, prove everything,
and
then
what
take
what
it.
and what is happening is, because we have put science on so much high pedestal, so many times most of the religious traditions or
Right.
Indian cultural traditions, they end up in a situation where they say that no, this is scientifically proved, this is
Yes.
science. So I
So
mean,
true.
why do you have to go after science? But because science is considered superior to religion, which is probably not the case in terms of the Sanatan Dharma, I would say, sitting near Swami Vivekananda. So we continue, Gita ji,
Absolutely. Good.
and where okay.
In 1400 BC.
In 1400 BC, a great sage made an attempt to arrange, analyze, and generalize upon certain psychological facts. When was it? 1400 BC. He
Wow.
was followed by many others who took up parts of what he had discovered and made a special study of them. The Hindus alone of all ancient races took up the study of this branch of knowledge in right earnest. I'm teaching you now about it, but how many of you will practice it? How many days? How many months will it be before you give it up? You are impractical on this subject. In India, they will preserve for ages and ages. You'll be astonished to hear that they have no churches, no common prayers or anything of the kind, but they every day still practice the breathings and try to concentrate the mind, and that is the chief part of their devotion.
Ah,
These are the main points. Every Hindu must do these. It is the religion of the country. Only each one may have a special method, a special form of breathing, a special form of concentration. And what is one special method? Even one's wife need not know, the
hmm.
father need not know, the sons. But they all have to do these. And there is nothing occult about these things. The word occult has no bearing on them. Near the Ganga, thousands and thousands of people may be seen daily sitting on its bank, breathing and concentrating with closed eyes.
Hmm.
There may be two reasons that make certain practices practicable for the generality of mankind. One is the teachers hold that the ordinary people are not fit for them. There may be some truth in this, but it is due more to pride. The second is the fear of persecution. A man, for instance, would not like to practice breathing publicly in this country because he would be thought to so queer. It is not the fashion here. On the other hand, in India, if a man prayed, "Give us this day our daily bread,"
Yes.
we would laugh at him. Nothing could be more foolish to the Hindu mind than to say, "Our Father, which art in heaven." The Hindu, when he worships, thinks that God is within himself.
So
Amazing.
beautifully explained to the West. So beautifully explained.
So what he said openly at that time, now if you say in this way, in similar fashion, there might be a different type of reaction. Reaction. But I'll just read this again, Gita. We will probably um, continue in the next session. But what
Absolutely.
what he said here is, uh, especially I wanted to underline the, the contrast that he brought. When he said, if a man prayed, "Give us this day our daily bread," people would laugh at him. Nothing could be more foolish to the Hindu mind than to say, "Our Father which art in heaven." The Hindu, when he worships, think that God is within himself. I think
Absolutely.
Deho Devalaya Prokto. This is very, very important. So you want to say some concluding remarks from what we read in this lecture of Swami Vivekananda, hints on practical spirituality.
So, so beautifully said about the non judgment, about the true Hindu, the way they are. And this is what I actually meant when I said we live yoga. This is in us. We get up in the morning and we start with breathing, we start with yoga. That's how I start my morning. And this is so true that this is a part of our life. I don't consider it like exercise for me. This is my being. So it is so rightfully said, and somebody needs to address it. Even now, it needs to be addressed. Even in India, it needs to be addressed. Sadly, sometimes I would say what the Indian values are, what the Hindu values are, and
Absolutely.
what actually is Hindu, not the Hinduism, which is a little different than it goes.
Actually, Hindu and Hinduism are the same. Only when people talk about it in different ways, they
Yeah, it
put
is.
their own label of meaning. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But again, Hinduism and humanity are interchangeable in the sense that whatever basic principles are, be it Vasudeva Kutumbakam or Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, that is not restricted to any special particular group of people. It is
It's
a
more way
relative.
of life. I would. That's how I interpret
Yeah.
in my
So
way.
we'll take second part of this hints on practical spirituality in this next session. But thank you very much, Geeta ji.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us, and be one with the words of Swami Vivekananda for more joy in life.
Absolutely.